And we're live again. Wonderful German internet. Oh
like
God.
literally,
We
when I used to play multiplayer games with a couple of Germans, the internet never worked. It just
yeah
never did.
yeah yeah. We're supposed to be the super developed country. It was also one of the first to really be good at this whole technology stuff, IT stuff, and we in Germany we make jokes, call it Dunkeldeutschland, dark Germany, because we have so many spots that have no internet, entire villages to this fucking day. Places
The,
that don't even have DSL, they still have dial-up shit.
and the best thing about that time when I used to play with German, the internet I had at that time wasn't good. Pretty old stuff, but it was miles better than the internet of the Germans playing with us.
So you must understand in regards to internet, despite being having been a leading country in it, we are a third world country. We
Like
still, for our mobile phones, we still have this practice that should be outlawed. Bloody hell! For mobile data, you have to still buy volume tariffs, where you buy like 10 gigabytes a month for 10 euros. It's incomprehensible. And it was just 10 years ago, you would get 50 megabytes. Wasn't 2014?
The best thing usually was when we had to download. That was specifically Destiny when I used to play Destiny 1. And when we had to download an update, they would get jealous over like a download speed of 5 megabytes a second.
Well, that is high speed, of course. Okay, Horned Rabbit is with us again as well. Yes, that much for that much. Or that much for that little, rather. Hello, the Alan Raptor. Yeah, we are continuing with our stream that had just crashed, sadly. I am sorry about that. That is the wonderful German internet. It also seems to crash, especially when I do streams where I criticize socialism a lot. I have been in a political party for 10 years, and during that time I had a lot of crackling noises in my calls. They stopped when I was not in that party anymore. Just
Well, as long as he didn't have a lot of accidents.
Look, I don't know whether they were observing me because I was leader of the local chapter, or whether they were observing other people in the party, because we had radical communists there, we also had neo-Nazis there, because they all struggled to take over the bloody thing. The communists won in the end. Well, the crackling noises stopped when I left. And by the way, those crackling noises, that's a thing of the 80s. That's when your secret services hacked into your line to listen to you. What's the word? The sneaky secret listening in, when they were listening in on your calls. Yeah, because there was an actual change in the line, the way it went. But that is not the case anymore today. I have been told by reliable sources, or that I consider reliable, that these days, and that includes back then when I was in that party, that these noises do not actually happen naturally anymore, but they actively inject them to make you uncomfortable, to make you a little paranoid that is there something going on. So when you hear crackling in your mobile phone call, that's not natural.
Bastards.
But hey, since I am a path stickler, so not my problem. But yeah, there were lots of weird people there. That when you are organizing within the party, you have to deal with all of these horrible people. But off topic, man, I'm good at this.
Yeah. What part were we at? We were right about to get into reincarnation, weren't we?
No, we were just to. I wanted to get back to. I think reincarnation we keep for later. The issue here is that Connor alluded to, due to how it was phrased, that Buddhism is not accepting empirical reality or objective reality, which is untrue.
Yes.
It is the most untrue. The opposite is the case. What does not accept empiricism and objective reality is Gnosticism, Hermeticism to a degree, and the socialist ideology that seems to be built on that. And it uses a lot of similar terminology, often I assume through translation errors, as well as through, if you read all of this, all the way back to Taoism, read that from the immature and limited narcissistic mindset, because then you cannot comprehend all these concepts. You will immediately interpret them in a much more egotistical way, where you need to put in things like the purposes of the universe and such stuff, and or derive instead of just from a flow from and back to the Tao, you come up with, there's a plan, there's providence, there's God's plan, and I'm just doing his work, and that's how I am important. Because without that importance, they can't, a narcissist can't exist, basically, because it's all ego. And that's just summarizing from before. I'm sorry, please correct me.
No. What I wanted to add is basically a great example that comes from my experience with translation errors or translation weirdness. Is the Buddhist tradition I practice, the school I practice, Burma Buddhism, is often translated as a shamanistic tradition, but that word shamanistic doesn't exist in Old Tibetan or Tibetan. It's just a way Westerners have translated it. The big difference is in Burma Buddhism you work more with internal energy and the energies of the elements during meditation, because the elements also have certain emotional aspects to them, as certain emotions belong to certain elements. So you meditate with specific elements to teach you how to deal with X, Y, Z.
Yeah, there are martial arts who incorporate that those ideas, and it's simply what it does in practice is by imagining something, it affects the rest of your body, how you act. So if you imagine fire, if you imagine earth, you will manifest, you will execute a technique slightly different.
Which, as an example, ninjutsu, the one I used to practice, had the same 5 elements as the Burma Buddhist school, and they had techniques. Every techniques you could do in these 5 different ways, and each time the technique would be slightly different.
Yeah. I'm familiar with that. Sadly, the last one I went to, the last dojo of that I went to, turned out to be a mech dojo, because the teacher there just wanted to get into the pants of a co-worker and impress her with the martial arts. He's good at technique, but man, he's a lousy teacher. And he didn't show up anymore after he had a ring on her finger and and a roast in the oven.
Okay.
It's just pathetic. But yeah, that's those issues. And that sadly, that school of ninjutsu has a lot of issues. There's a lot to criticize, but it's very good if you want to learn balance and intricate motion, let's say. Get a sense for your surroundings. For that, it's I'd say it's good. Not so much for fighting or defending yourself. But that's a different story.
Indeed. But we get back into the video.
Yes. So Connor is wrong about Buddhism rejecting objective reality.
Knowledge or whatever. So the Buddha, he said, I am... All Buddhism means is basically gnosis. But Buddha means gnosis. A Buddha is one who's attained gnosis, right?
Okay.
What?
That part I never... that part of the video, honestly, God never quite understood.
Is he trying to link Buddhism to Gnosticism? Then he's making the exact mistake that I feared.
I mean, I personally, I find Gnosticism entirely confusing.
As I said, it reads like a heresy of Buddhism and Taoism.
And so, a topic concerning Gnosticism, I would leave to you because you understand more about it than I do.
The book by Taizen Deshimaru Roshii, Konzentration is the title. It's a play on word with Zen in the middle. Is very good at illustrating that. This knife's edge that the path is, and how when you read that, when you understand how narcissists interpret things, and how Gnosticism, the actual Gnosticism, sees things, how socialism sees things, as it in my understanding, is a product of these nonsensical interpretations of the world or wishful thinking on the world. Every concept you have in Taoism and Buddhism, Gnosticism will turn inside out and on its head and basically be the dark reflection. Everything that Gnosticism does, that socialism does, Buddhism, especially the Zen Buddhism I'm familiar with, Soto Zen, declares as of the path, as what will lead to ruin. That starts with the whole thing about that it's not accepting objective reality, because it instead tries to obscure it. It gets lost in the wishful thinking, and it indulges in what's the word I'm looking for? Well, it indulges in all the dark parts. It's basically just one half of a whole, which you also find reflected in alchemy, which I also think is a heresy of the Eastern ideas of the interrelation of the elements, where it is interpreted that you can actively manipulate the elements to cast spells and create material from nothing, or change material completely. It's like the wishful thinking conclusion about a higher concept. Like, it's a childish interpretation. Like, you have this big philosophy with its higher consciousness concepts, and then along comes a child or juvenile and builds a Dungeons and Dragons rule book out of it, with stats and spells and all of that. And it's like, what the fuck are you doing? It's like the basis of like the interrelation of the elements, or interrelatedness of the elements. Like you increase one that feeds the one that feasts on it, and weakens the one that would lessen it. That's the basis of traditional Chinese medicine. Now, we know there's a lot of bullshit in traditional Chinese medicine, like get your get your rhinoceros powder for better libido and stuff like that, or drink scalding water against your throat pain, which causes scar tissue and thus throat cancer. That's all nonsense. That's all nonsense. But that is basically like there's a good original foundational idea in traditional Chinese medicine. Like if you have symptom X, that is element X, and that is related to this organ, and if this organ is doing this, then it is likely that other organ is doing another thing, which is the actual cause. That's kind of how that was actually used or originally used. And
this
school medicine, I'm done after the school medicine. Western school medicine has a similar issue. Great foundational idea, and then we have Big Pharma trying to sell us placebos that only cause us harm because they want to make money. The traditional Chinese medicine has gone the same corrupt path. They're both things with good foundational ideas that turned into bullshit.
My quick point about traditional Chinese medicine, a flatmate of mine finished his studies in it recently, and what he talked about, always told me, is basically what they learned is what you said is the original intention.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they had in school. Another thing I wanted to point out with what he said, comparing it to the state of Buddha to Gnosis, is, to me, it once again falls into the pitfall of Buddhism is a holistic worldview.
Yes.
It's a holistic philosophy, and very often people in the West, which it's an understandable mistake to make, take parts of it and then interpret it from the Western perspective without looking at it in the context of Buddhism. As he does here, he takes the state of Buddha and compares it to Gnosis, says, oh, that's a person who achieved Gnosis, when in fact
enlightenment is not Gnosis. Gnosis is something you claim to have. Enlightenment is something you get to, and when you have it, you don't talk about it, because you can't really translate that.
Also, in the very sense of the word Buddhism, is a very idea of Buddhism. If you've reached enlightenment, you basically have reached a point where you can't say I've reached enlightenment, because you got rid of the I.
Yeah.
You remove that part of yourself. So
it's I don't like the word ego death, but it is the positive version of that. And if you take the word literally, but I would rather say it is the super ego, the buddhi, being able to always keep the other two, the lesser parts of consciousness or subconsciousness, in check.
But also, one thing Buddhist teachers very often say, or told me, which I think is a good way of looking at it, like nirvana and the state of enlightenment, is very hard to explain to somebody who hasn't achieved it.
Nirvana is not paradise. It is rather the harshest way to say it, which is also wrong, as most of these translations and interpretations. But the most ham-fisted way is, it is the end of your individual self as you return to you could say you return into the Tao, into the source, from which you can return technically, but while you're in it, you're not there.
But also
think of it like the in DS9, in Deep Space Nine, the planet of the shapeshifters, where Odo comes from.
I've never watched DS9.
Oh my god. Yeah, but and here's the problem. What the socialists want to create is basically that gray goo in the material world, as they think that only once all these differences between everyone have been destroyed, then we can become one and therefore overcome this material prison, which is
the thing about nirvana is also the complicated thing about it is it's not, as some people believe, a return to a great whole, because there's no I or
Well, it's like it's similar. I think the closest similar thing is in Christianity, to return to God.
Yeah, but in Christianity, even God would have is often conceptualized as having a will.
Yeah, but that is the well. That's why I'm saying in the comparison,
Yeah, I know
because
what you mean.
Christianity also claims that the God that they gave a name and therefore basically limited their God. But technically, they believe that their God is also infinite, and that is what the Tao or the Nirvana is. It is infinite, and if you enter the infinite, well, what's left?
You know, to round up the Nirvana talk, the one way it was explained to me is that the reason why Nirvana is so difficult to explain is imagine explaining to someone who's never eaten a mango what a mango tastes like.
Or to a
You're gonna
colorblind who only sees
you're gonna
grayscale.
you're gonna make comparison. You very soon reach a point where you have to compare it to other things.
Yeah, and I think another good example is how do you explain what a four-dimensional object looks like to someone who, well, to a human,
Yeah,
or even to
well,
someone who has trouble visualizing a three-dimensional object.
how do you explain to a paraplegic how to move your legs?
Ah,
Like how would you explain to somebody who doesn't have arms how do you move your arms? You just do it.
yeah. Hond Rabbit says, I would say that naming the god was done for simplicity's sake. Yes, that is the thing why Taoism calls it Tao. Tao is not a name. It's just a word to refer to, point to it, not because Tao doesn't forbid you from giving it a name. It rather says that if you do give it a name, you are limiting it and therefore not describing it, because it is infinite, and you cannot describe the infinite by a defining term, like a name, because then you only deal with a slice of it.
Anyway, should we continue?
Yeah.
So a bodhisattva is obviously trying to attain gnosis, and he says there will be many, many Buddhas after me. I've just found this path.
He's conflating so many terms.
Yes, he is, and also, as we said, he completely wrongly falls. But his definition of bodhisattva is very wrong.
Maybe they should have gotten a Buddhist on. I'm sure there are some actual ones in Britain.
Probably, yeah.
So the Bodhisattva says there are Buddhas coming after me?
Yeah, I honestly got a lot of what he says here. I don't quite get in what way.
I think I know what he's trying to get at, but the words he's using it's effectively word salad. And is off the cuffing more than I am doing. There are other people you try to bring to enlightenment, some of which will enter nirvana, and some of which will also choose to be bodhisattva and be reincarnated to help other people on the path. That's what he's trying to say, but the whole it's equivocating the right word. No, I think that's one of these false friends. He's trying to say that gnosis is the same as enlightenment, and you couldn't be further from the truth. Mixing these two up, gnosis is the claim that you know. Enlightenment is something you seek. The Gnostic always claims to already know everything. The socialists are Gnostics because they claim to know how the world should work and how it really works, when they actually don't, because everything they do fails.
So, as a not really an aside, but it's connected to this. Speaking of the knowing and the seeking, and in Buddhist teaching, the point where you've truly gotten on the right path to enlightenment is when you stop seeking enlightenment, but know you will achieve it. Not in the sense that you claim to know, but you deeply, basically, you. How should I say this? Your mind is removed of doubt. In a sense, it's hard to explain it.
I think it's rather you go to a more intuitive level, because doubt is what helps you to discern the issues of reality.
You intuitively know.
Yeah, what I mentioned in the previous stream that crashed, sadly, I would say when you're obsessed with the goal, or when you believe when you believe you know, which is what gnosis is. They claim that they know, but what they really do is they believe they know. While the Buddhist knows that he doesn't know, because he doesn't have enlightenment yet. And
that's a much better way of phrasing it than I did.
Thank you. And the thing is, when you claim to know, and when you try to get the goal by any means necessary, instead of adhering to the path, where the path is the goal, imagine that as your mind, spirit, whatever, being so cramped up that it can't actually receive anything. It's like playing a music instrument, playing the guitar. When you're cramped up, when there's some muscle in your body cramped up, and that can be something in muscle in your tongue, the moment you relax that, the more relaxed you get, the better you play, the more fluent it gets. And it's the same thing with meditation and with the whole thing about, well, will I get enlightenment this life? I don't know. It happens when it happens. And there's also levels to that. Like there is a small enlightenment, if you will, that can happen very early on, which is the state of mind when you realize that everything that exists is interconnected, is interrelated in its cause and effect, and that is a special state of mind. And what we call the flow state is very similar to that. Like when you're in the flow, when you're in the zone about the thing you're doing, that's something related to that. The Taoist term closest to, or rather it's an aspect of that, is Wu Wei, which is the flow from the Tao into the world, into creation, or that makes creation. And then things happen, and it goes back into the Tao, and it's less of a submission to that flow, but it's rather you just go with it. And that is when things are at peace. When you're in the zone, that is basically that, similar to that. None of that has anything to do with gnosis. It's more of a sense of awareness. It's a thing in the present.
Exactly, it's a being in the present, and having removed the desire, the attachment. As in desire to reach the goal, to flow, to follow the flow, to fight against the flow. It's just going with the flow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and whoever rejects reality, you're going against the flow, basically. If you're in denial, because being in denial of anything that is true, that is real, causes you harm.
Yes. Anyway,
so much in so little. It's like somebody sprayed a wagon of horse manure against the side of your house, and now we sit here and scrape it off with toothbrushes.
the thing is also as to come back to the forever topic of translations, which is often the case in Buddhism. Buddhism can appear as having quite big contradictions, but the thing is, it's because the underlying ideas are very specific, and so what sounds contradictory in translation might not be contradictory at all if you understand the thing behind it.
Yeah, I have read 3 translations into German of the Tao Te Ching by now, and they're as different as Bibles, and that shouldn't even happen, because it's not a very large text. One of the earlier ones was earliest even. Do I have it here? I think I have it. Oh, I thought it was on that stack. It was by a German noble, and he liked the original poetry, if you will, of the text, and he wanted to keep that in the translation, some of it, and it just distorts everything, because the problem with translation is it's basically a spectrum. If you translate the meaning, the absolute meaning, you cannot remain in the confines of the text. You will need a sentence more, you will need extra words in order to pinpoint that meaning. Or you can try to retain the poetic structure, like what was done in the dub for Disney's Jungle Book into German. The songs are still there, and that thing has won prizes. One of the best translation works ever done. But the text has been changed, the words have been changed, but the idea of the songs remains. But it now works as a poetic thing. But it's the literal images that the texts of the songs create in your mind, they're slightly different.
I think, to me, a good example here is if you a book that I've read part of it, always continuing reading it because it's such a, not as in big book, but a heavy book, is Nietzsche's Also sprach Zarathustra. Thus spoke Zarathustra, which is the language is incredibly symbolic and meaning laden. It's very heavy language, not that it's difficult to read, but it takes a lot of time to contemplate, to understand what is meant. If you now translate this, it's gonna be one hell of a thing to translate it in such a way that it makes the reader of the translated text understand the same thing as the reader of the original text.
It's basically impossible without commentary.
And that's the thing with Buddhism. It's so heavy in not symbolism, but in thoughts, ideas, and philosophical arguments, etc., behind the text, that you often need more than just a translation to really get what is meant.
Yeah, and to reference that book by Taizen Deshimaru Roshii again, there's also a mention of there's no soul, and later on, the word soul is used in regards to reincarnation, and I think there's a part where it just reads sloppy, and I don't think that's due to the author. I think that's due to the translator. It reads as if the translator got tired. Just a vibe I got.
That's why I a lot of stuff that I read and deal with is mostly from Buddhist teachers who write about Buddhism, not in the sense that they write about the theory or explain the text to you, but they talk about the philosophy.
Yeah, and Buddhism is not something you can solely understand by just reading. The books. Especially as through translations.
I think one book that I find really good is a book by the master Sogyal Rinpoche, who the title I think is the the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying in English. Das tibetische Buch vom Leben und Versterben.
Yeah. By the way, after the stream, I will add into the chat box, no, not the chat box, the info box, some of the books we mentioned throughout.
Yeah.
Just as sources that we referenced.
So yeah, I'm mentioning this because it's incredibly helpful to read the things of the Buddhist masters, to understand not specific things in the philosophy, but backgrounds to the philosophy that would help you understand the philosophy, but you still will have to practice to fully understand it.
Oh dear. It's 3 words. He used 3 words.
It's such... If ever there's a thing that I would call incredibly heavy and dense, it's Buddhism.
Yeah, I am
in the best possible terms.
After just these how far are we in? Almost 3 minutes of 12. I fully understand now why you were so upset with this. This is like listening as a Christian who knows the scripture and who's not a weirdo like Ken Ham, but a serious Christian, not just one who believes himself serious, who listening to YouTube American atheist and Reddit atheist arguments that.
Yeah, my example would be if you were a Christian and you hear somebody making the argument, if you go up to heaven after death, why not just kill yourself?
Yeah, I think this is worse.
Yes, it is. It is worse, but it kind of goes into that ballpark of not understanding the philosophy.
Yeah, because well, with what you just mentioned, those are logical holes that you get when the concept isn't explained properly.
And it's also, to be fair, it's also a question of master to Buddhist.
Of what?
If you get reincarnated anyways, and you could achieve better then, or if nirvana happens after death, why don't just kill yourself?
Yeah, because bad karma makes bad reincarnation.
But also, you're interrupting the path.
Yeah.
The entire goal is the path.
Yeah.
So interrupting it is the ultimate evil you can do.
If the path is the goal, not all means are just.
Yes.
That path will then disappear and be so this is kind of the eternal aspect of and universalistic aspect of Buddhism. Some schools say everyone is able to attain the Buddha.
The Buddha. I attained the Buddha?
Yes.
I can. There's a store in town where you. You can get the little ones. Amazon. The little ones only cost $3.50.
Oh no. One thing I wanted to specifically mention here: there's a very important concept in Buddhism that the image I've always been told by. Once again, I always rely on Buddhist masters because that's where I got most of my knowledge of the theory from.
Well, it makes more sense than asking your baker around the door who has only peripherally heard of it, or the guy who just started learning about it, because then you end up with this. And I'm sorry, I'm joking about him using words even grammatically wrong, but that is just an indicator of how bad of a choice he is for this topic. So this is less against him. This is more about why do you get him on to speak about this when he knows so little about it that he can't even use the words grammatically correct in a sentence or the correct words in the correct spot. Why should anyone take him seriously? The only people who will are people who know less about it than he does, as well as the others on the panel.
What I wanted to say is specifically about the similar to you, about the word, the notion of obtaining. Buddhist masters always explain it to me, you already have enlightenment, you just need to uncover it. It's like the sun is always shining, but it may be covered by clouds.
And that's
You
why you
have
get
to-
diarrhea. Sometimes the shit just needs to get out so that the sun can start shining out of your ass.
Exactly.
By the way, you will be surprised how many Buddhist masters, Zen masters will use analogies like that.
Oh yeah,
It's
I mean,
hilarious. Because the thing is, when you get closer to enlightenment, you realize that it's all a joke. But not in not in the way of reality doesn't exist. Not in that nonsense way, but rather in a it's all a bit of a playful thing.
That's one thing.
Yeah, and this playfulness about being alive, about existing in this world, is the corrupted version of that would then be what's it called? Not matrix theory, simulation theory. That would be the corrupted version of that, because then we get back to Gnosticism and the material world being a prison by Yaldabaoth and all of that nonsense.
Indeed.
Others say they're not, so it's not theistic,
Mm-hmm.
As Josh.
Buddhism has a relation. Does have a root in Taoism, and you could say the Tao is a less confined concept of the Judeo-Christian God.
The one thing I found very important that's why I stopped with Buddhism is also heavily influenced by the place where it's from. So in some Buddhist traditions, there are certainly things that are called spirits, gods, and etc. But they all don't quite work how we in the West imagine them to work. They're more representatives of emotions, actions, etc., which you use during meditation. That's one part of it. The other part of it, I always find it a bad idea to think in the terms of theism when talking about Buddhism. Yeah. Because ultimately, I once had it phrased to me like this: ultimately, the most atheistic religion there is Buddhism, because a Buddhist doesn't really care. Yeah, a Buddhist doesn't really even question if a god exists or not.
Because there's no point about that. The source of creation is irrelevant to worship.
Exactly.
Because it just is.
If a god exists or not, it matters that you follow the path.
Yeah, but it's the same with Taoism. Taoists do not worship the Tao because that's nonsensical.
And yes, there's a tradition of worshipping the Buddha, but it's more like respect. Hey, this guy gave us our teaching.
Yeah, when you worship the Buddha, you're already doing something wrong.
Exactly.
You're supposed to emulate the Buddha the same way you're supposed to emulate Christ.
And part of it is it's very human to build Buddha statues to show, hey, he achieved such a great thing, we have to honor this achievement.
Yeah, and it's more of a reminder of, hey, that's the path. That's where the path leads. So let's stay on the path.
When you see Buddhists praying to Buddha statues, it's not the Western sense of praying. It's looking at Buddha, what he achieved, and then meditating on what he achieved. Basically, you don't worship him in the sense of, oh, dear Buddha, XYZ. You go like, you achieved the goal, you went on the path and taught us that, and you meditate in front of him to have this in front of you, to visualize what it is, because a lot of Buddhism also works with visualization, having paintings of gods which represent an emotion, so you visualize that emotion. That kind of thing.
Yeah, it's that kind of meditation would be a sense of contemplation, and
yes,
different from the what Soto Zen, for example, does, that simply works with the passive mind that only lets all thought flow. There are different ways to go about all this, and I am a friend of the Soto Zen way. In that it is, I would say, different things work for different people. For me, this is the easiest, and it helps wonders with autistic overload, with migraine even. I cannot recommend it for severe PTSD. Light PTSD, yes, it can help you work through something. Severe PTSD, it will just make you spasm on the floor because that stuff wants to be processed, and when it is severe, it is overwhelming, and yeah, you'll end up looking like an epileptic. Not recommended. Then, the thing is, the important thing is, this is all because I've met very Christians with whom I meditated who tried it out, and they said, "Oh no, I rather pray. That's the same. That works better for me." I'm sorry, those are not the same things. Prayer works very different from meditation. There are similarities, but prayer is something active. Meditation, less so. Especially Soto Zen. Soto Zen is completely passive.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, because especially when prayer includes asking God for something or asking Jesus, the whole idea of what would Jesus do, that's a good thing about the whole thing. But what you then do, what the non-believer would interpret is, you're not actually asking Jesus what would Jesus do. You are asking your idea of Jesus and run your question through this mental construct of Jesus or God, and get an according answer, which might be, well, so that would be that in a way that is a self-reflective thing, and it is if you have a good version of that construct, it will also lead good results. But a narcissist will most likely not have a good God construct or good Jesus construct, and therefore only get justification for whatever the narcissist wants to do, and maybe even believe himself the next prophet. But I think I went a bit far off the topic again.
Said it's more of a system of virtue ethics.
Yeah, there is a bit of debate as to whether or not Buddhism is a philosophy or a religion, because of course there's
I know I'm interrupting again, but a quick summary of the. Yes, there's a discussion on it. The conclusion that I've read, heard, and most encountered from people who study religions is that it's a philosophy with a religious tradition. So it has aspect of both. Yeah,
and Savaki Kodo, the teacher of Taizen Deshimaru, Roshii, who was so much an individualist that he didn't want to found his own school. He just did what he did, which sounds very similar about the Buddha, doesn't it? His personal definition of religion was all diligent work. When you diligently work, when you keep yourself disciplined, that is religion. So it's a differently spiritual interpretation of the term. Like, of course, that's not the dictionary definition. But it is we use this in practical language when we say things like, he is religiously working on his project.
Yep.
Yeah, but otherwise this question cannot be further. Is it a religion, is it a philosophy, cannot be further answered, because the philosophy aspect is much stronger here than in others.
And what does it matter in the end?
Like, best not start about the Hinayana and Mahayana, because oh my god.
Oh my god.
Because people would call that hypocritical.
I mean, yes, they will call that.
Yeah,
well,
because one is the one with 1,000 rules. That is for the people who have trouble making their own decisions, taking responsibility for themselves. They're not very emotionally mature yet, or
If I remember correctly,
capable.
it's the difference of the small wagon and the big wagon, right?
Yes, that's the Hinayana and the Mahayana. The Mahayana is the big wagon, and the big wagon is basically, it's more lenient because it's for the mature mind that knows how to distinguish and between what corrupts you and what doesn't, and therefore doesn't need to abide to the extremely rigorous rules of the Hinayana, the small wagon. Like, oh, don't look at women, they corrupt your minds, and
the one thing
Hinayana is like, yeah, I just don't need to fuck them all.
Why not? No, this brings a bigger point in like there's something at a different level to that also in Zen Buddhism, where you have three different ways of meditation, or they're called three different ways of achieving enlightenment, and one of them is always translated as the best, most efficient, but they always say it's just they are the wrong words, but it's hard to explain it differently. But the thing is, there are Sutra, Tantra, and Dzogchen. Sutra is the meditation practice where you effectively work with physical elements, as in to fire meditation you lie in the sun, to earth meditation you meditate in the forest, and so on. Tantra, which is what I'm practiced the most, which is most comfortable for me, is when you are meditating with the energies. So you try to focus on fire breathing techniques, air breathing techniques, or other elemental techniques which help you deal with those energies, that element, and the ideas behind it.
Yeah, and before anyone thinks, this is like Avatar: The Last Airbender, where you do magical things and believe you can breathe fire or not. That's not what that is. Fire breathing, for example, is not in the sense of the circus, but it is something everybody who has drunk a bit too much has naturally done. That is when you take a quick deep breath and then slowly press out, or let the air press out through your mouth. That is not big open, but this slow pressure. And through that you have effects that sober you up somewhat.
It also warms you up.
Yeah, but it also sobers you up from the alcohol somewhat, and that is described as fire breathing.
I once did a very intense practice of fire breath techniques, and it was during winter, and I had my windows basically completely open to get fresh air into my room. So my room was very cold, but through the techniques I was sweating like crazy. I was feeling like I was.
Yeah, that's how you. That's maybe you've. I've seen that once on TV where they watched people meditating with an infrared camera, and I had put wet towels on their shoulders. Like the upper body was naked, and I had put wet towels onto them, and they were drying the wet towels simply through their meditation.
Yeah, but the last point I wanted to bring up was Dzogchen, and Dzogchen is then something you cannot do on your own. You will have to go to a Buddhist monastery and have a master teach you how to do it.
Yeah.
Which is a similar education to actually a school education where you learn logic, etc., and the teachings, and has also specific exams that you have absolved. And thus it's called the quote-unquote best and most efficient, even though they call it that. Every Buddhist master always tells you, do what's best for you, because that's the best path for you. Which again,
the narcissistic Gnostic will take as, I can do whatever I want because that's what feels nice. That would be the hedonist.
Yeah.
Like this is how easy these all this good advice, all these terms can be corrupted into bullshit. And the narcissist, the Gnostic, does this with every single term, and we've seen our three friends here accidentally, not out of malice, but out of ignorance, fall exactly into that trap, and probably because they took the interpretations from the bad guys. There was one more thing I wanted to mention. Right. When the guy on the right, I'm sorry, I don't know his name.
I also don't know.
Mentioned that or mistook enlightenment for gnosis. No, the Buddhi is not gnosis. It's the rational mind. It is rationality. It is when and here we go into the heretics again. People like Hegel and the socialists, when they talk about Vernunft, the German word reason, when they always talk about reason. That's what that means. Now, but the problem is, when we look at Hegel and Marx and all these other socialists, what is reasonable about their ideology? None of what they claim, they claim to have the ideology of reason and rationality, but what they do in practice is the biggest opposite of that. A reasonable mind would not continue down a path that only leads to failure. It would adapt, it would learn from its mistakes. So the only conclusions we can take from these weirdos is that either they are insane, because they keep trying the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, or it is actually about the results that they produce, which we should be even more scared about.
Yeah.
Because then we're not dealing with dumb people, we're dealing with evil people. Sorry.
The guy's name is Rory.
That's Rory? What happened to Rory? I remember the name, but... See, this is what happens when I have bad facial recognition. Rory looked different last year.
You need to update that AI in your head. Download new facial recognition software.
How did that happen? Okay.
What? There was a point I wanted to make, but I forgot.
I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, it's similar to the critical theory thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing critical about it.
Exactly. They're basically, so with all the Gnostic stuff and the socialist stuff, all the words they use for themselves, the opposite is true. Everything they accuse everyone else of, they are guilty of themselves. It's all projection. It's all inversion. All of it. That's the rule of thumb. When you find an exception, great, put it on a pedestal. There won't be much on that shelf.
Japan, where they do depict Buddha as some kind of deity, so there is a splinter.
That would be a form of sort of Zen Buddhism, if you will. That's quite popular.
I would conceptualize it.
He's not a deity in Zen Buddhism, but go on.
I think we already covered these Buddha statues before.
Yeah. Oh God. Bloody hell. This is not. If we would be talking about Chakravartin or some Hindu god, okay, but the Buddha doesn't work like that. Not in Zen Buddhism either.
And yes, there are statues of him, and yes, there are people who meditate while looking at statues of him, but that's not praying to him.
Uh-huh.
At least shouldn't be. And if you're a Buddhist who prays for Buddha, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, you're worse than a Christian who does that with Jesus.
Because at least you get the idea of praying correctly.
Yeah. But you have this deification much stronger with Jesus, because, well, he is part of a Trinity in most branches of Christianity.
As I've had explained to me, my mother is a minister, so she actually studied theology and everything. So the concept, as I understand it, is that Jesus was fully God and fully human at the same time. So the God's manifestation on this earth while also fully being human.
There are different interpretations on all that, and I'm not gonna argue without
know.
Cyrek present because.
I know. I'm
Ugh.
just saying that's how it was explained to me,
It's
and
okay.
so with that explanation, I can kind of see the mistake being made of praying to Jesus.
Yeah.
More, it bears some parallels to Greek polytheism rather than Abraham.
No. How is having one Buddha polytheism? What Japan has, what you're referring to, is Shinto. Shinto, however, is animistic. That's what the North Germanic religion beliefs were. That's about the spirits of the land. You have gods in the North Germanic religion, but they play second fiddle.
Yes, but that's the important distinction. It's that yes, there exist gods, but that bigger god is not responsible for the river here. It's the local river spirit that's responsible for the river here, so to speak, to simplify it.
I'm in pain.
Yeah, I'm very much simplifying it, but the animism is that everything has a soul. Everything has everything.
Yeah, but I mean, from what Rory said, I'm in pain.
Oh. Well, get used to it.
Oh.
Not specifically Rory. I found him the least. I found him well misunderstood. Josh is more playing the mediator, but.
Yeah, but Rory he seems to do the best he can. He's not condescending. Yeah. He's trying to explain from what he knows, which isn't much of anything, probably. Just the bits and pieces he got from pop culture or that he stumbled across in life. I don't think... He doesn't sound like someone who's read up on anything, even Wikipedia.
There are much better sources than Wikipedia online. There are some good sources online.
That's why I'm saying it, not even Wikipedia. That's why I think it almost cruel to put him on and not find somebody else for this topic.
But also I find you are right. I also find just doing a one and done thing on Buddhism is not really possible because it's just very, very, very complex.
Yeah, this is... Exploration.
Well, I can
no.
sort of see a few links.
No, I just saw the title again. Exploring Buddhism and the Eightfold Path, and you're not even in the same. You're not even. It's not just that you're not in the same stadium. You're not in the same town. You're completely lost. Like the topic is over there, and you went, I don't know, underground into space.
Sort of see a few links to when you said virtue ethics. I can see the metaphysics of Buddhism with reincarnation as a little bit adjacent to Platonism. Mm-hmm. But then one of the questions I had, and this is why I remain skeptical of it, is
Platonism. That would be Hermeticism. That is the Gnostic connection.
Also, one thing I always curious is how people use the word metaphysics.
Should we just accuse all the Christian heresies of being actually Christian and representative of actual Christianity? Because that's what these guys are doing right now. It's like listening to some pseudo-esoteric, not even real esoteric, but pseudo-esoteric juvenile girls who bought a book about Wicca. And are now sitting in a circle doing, we are witches, we know how the dark magics work. That's what these guys sound like right now.
A very important thing here is as I understand what Connor means with metaphysics, it means about the aspect of belief in sin in the sense of is there a God, is there not a God, is there a soul, is there not a soul? Mm-hmm. As soon as he mentions that, you're already in the wrong ballpark. It's already the same topic we've discussed several times now about there not being gods, there not being a soul. These concepts are fundamentally different than Christian traditions and Christian philosophy, and coming to them without understanding the other perspective is just false.
Mhm.
It leads you to believe that Buddhism is X when in fact it is Y.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, as far as I've understood from reading the sort of Stanford summary of Buddhist thought, there was an assertion Buddha made that there is no core self. So how does an individual be reincarnated and that individual track across reincarnations if there is no core self of each individual?
Because
That's the part I took ahead in the stream that crashed, where the explanation often given is a candle that lights another candle, or if you play pool, the white ball hits another ball. There are two different balls, but one caused the other to move.
It's not
That's
your
all-
it's not your ego that transfers, not your conscious mind, if you will. Because
Exactly.
that's just the because that's just the most top layer of your being. The
And
one
the-
that has the hubristic gal to imagine that it is important.
And the way to explain it, and the often mentioned that Buddha gained knowledge of his previous life, is more an understanding of causation rather than seeing a thorough line of I have been this entity through these different lives.
Yeah.
It's more seeing this life caused this next life, this life caused next, as in this happens then this. Not in the sense of I've been these 3 lives before.
Yeah, and this connects as well to the topic of suffering, where Connor, I believe it was in the beginning, alluded that what did he say? Suffering is to be just taken or something. No, the idea is to reduce suffering in the world, and you engage in that through the path, because the path, if you stay on the path, if you remain a virtuous being and do not sin, in the Christian terminology, less suffering is caused. That doesn't mean no suffering, but less suffering, and through that your next incarnation will also suffer less. And veganism is founded on this idea. It is a philosophical idea. It is not about, oh, save the planet. It is not about oh, let's be healthy.
There's a reason why I'm vegetarian.
Yeah, and it
And
is not
it
about, and it
goes
is
back
not
to-
about let's eat super processed soy crap.
No, I always looked at there's no soy in the stuff that I
Yeah,
eat.
well, tofu doesn't have these problems, but
But
the
one thing I want-
which is interestingly enough, all this hipster vegan bullshit, they're never talking about tofu.
no.
I guess that doesn't make money.
Uh,
So
Speaking of tofu, just as a small aside, I've always found it hilarious if you have miso soup with tofu in it. It's just like, yes, I'm eating soybeans, basically all stuff that's made out of soybeans, and then you add soy sauce to it. It's just like I'm basically just eating soybeans processed in different ways.
I see. See, you're starting to see behind the illusion. Everything is the same. It's just manifested differently. Haha.
The the ramen school of philosophy.
Badumts. It is not even a bad analogy for this.
Yes.
Like, look, it's basically a trinity. It's all soy.
in the name of miso, tofu, and soy sauce.
Don't forget the sprout.
I do too.
I love the sprouts. They're amazing. But I think they have some health issues. But if you eat tons of them. But the important thing, the one important thing about veganism, the actual one, based on this philosophy of reducing suffering in the world, is that veganism, that original veganism, not the Western imitation bullshit, is those vegans are aware that they are depriving themselves of something.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, veganism is not the big health thing.
To explain a personal example of me, I know eating meat would be healthier for me, technically speaking, if I do it properly. But for me, it didn't even came as a decision out of philosophy to be a vegetarian. It's a decision out of experience.
Mm-hmm.
Through several meditation and several very heavy meditation practices, I had experiences which basically made me not want to eat meat and make me even have a negative reaction, psychological reaction to eating meat. So I basically stopped eating it because I couldn't, how should I say this, combine these two things anymore. For me, it was like clearly the decision that I will have to stop.
It eventually comes natural. And
so it came to me naturally. It wasn't, nobody convinced me.
Yeah, personally, I would say even that anyone who wants to eat meat should also at least once have killed and butchered the animal he wants to eat. Instead of just this processed stuff that there's been a time here when the really the gutter people, basically, the really dumb people in the big cities, they didn't even know that the sausage they buy in the store comes from animals.
Oh, my favorite thing was that there was a questionnaire in one city in Germany, and some kids thought that cows were violet because of the milk chocolate.
Yes, because
brand.
of Milka. So I've never seen a cow on TV, just the advertisement for Milka.
Yeah, the advertisement has a violet cow to give context to people who aren't German.
Yeah, it's painted violet, purple.
Also, one thing I wanted to point out here is that the proper people who are vegetarian like me, for very much personal reasons and certain experiences and religious practices, we don't tell others not to eat meat.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I even cook meat for my family.
Yeah, if a militant vegan is a hypocrisy in itself.
I'm not gonna eat it, but hey, it's for them. They themselves can decide whether they want to eat it or not.
It's a conclusion you have to come to yourself. It's not something you can do for virtue signaling or for a fashion or anything. Especially if you don't know how to have a nutritious food. You need to learn how to cook in that fashion, and those will simply be different dishes. If you want this imitation meat stuff or this imitation cheese, you're doing it wrong.
Oh well, I eat cheese. To be fair.
Well, that's why you said vegetarian.
Yeah, I don't eat the animals themselves, and I avoid products that are made out of animal themselves. Like I eat eggs because, in my conception, these are not animals.
They're not fertilized.
Yeah.
They just pop out and lay around on the ground.
And I eat cheese in the sense, well, it's milk from an animal, but it's an animal product in that sense, but it's not an animal itself.
Well, the process that leads there is a bit questionable, but not as insane as this what they falsely label artificial meat from the factory that they grow in a vat. Because the growth factor that is needed for that, they take out of the heart of a cow embryo.
Yeah.
The most non-vegan thing imaginable.
And I'm not trying to say that there are no critiques of how these things are produced. I'm just saying my personal decision is I do eat them for X, Y reasons.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Anyway.
You want?
Go ahead, it's fine.
So yeah, it's basically it's like the opposite of a platonic form. So the forms are fluid, basically. There are forms, but they're always in flux, and they're always changing. So
Thank you
you
for
have
putting
the
it
Dharma,
across,
obviously,
Plato.
which is essentially your body soul, if you like. That's what reincarnates, and that goes through progressions. Roughly speaking, I'm generalizing here, but every lifetime, the Siddhartha Gautama, originally the story, the traditional story is that many lifetimes before Siddhartha Gautama, he the body he was in at that stage went to a priest and said, I want to attain nirvana. He said, you will be reincarnated as Siddhartha Gautama in 1,000 lifetimes or whatever, and that's the traditional story. So it's sort of more a spiritual progression where you reincarnate not into only human form but animal form as well, and sort of.
And he is not entirely wrong here that there in the teaching it is mentioned that what Buddha taught is that the full path to enlightenment is not reachable simply in one life if you start the path in that life.
Mm-hmm. In Zen Buddhism, there is the way it was explained to me is that even if you have reached enlightenment, the great enlightenment in your life, you will still be reincarnated one more time to resolve all the karma you have.
Exactly.
By which you could have this explanation as to why some people just have nothing but bad luck.
And also here we once again come to the problem of conceptualizing Buddhists from a Western perspective without trying to get into the Buddhist perspective.
Mm-hmm.
In Burn Buddhism and in some schools of Tibetan Buddhism, there's the concept of the bardo body. It's not the soul, but it's the imprinted desires, habits, etc. that you have. So you imprint these ideas of the self, etc. onto the so-called bardo body, which is you could say is the unresolved karma, the unresolved desires, the unresolved whatever, which then causes the next life. But it is important to say it's not a soul. It's a construct of the karma, the desires, and everything else, which is why the last life comes, that life comes to resolve all of that, which is the end step to completely resolve that.
Mm-hmm. It's not all soul.
Yes.
And that's why it gets confusing when you use the same word 3 times but mean different things.
Absolutely.
You do lends to Dharma, basically, and then
it's sort of like the karma you acquire in life determines the nature of your reincarnation.
So is that bodily soul individuated from the life essence of the universe, which is a sort of disaggregated consciousness by the fact that it is in the entropic impermanent world, and then the goal is through enlightenment to return that energy?
Here we get to another point where he completely doesn't understand the thing. As mentioned, Nirvana is not an entity, not a hive mind, a soul of the world, etc. It's something else.
Yeah, I do hold it to him that he tries to find accurate words to express his thoughts, but
yes,
it is a sophisticated language. He is really trying.
Yes,
I don't think he's not. So for anyone who has trouble following what Connor tried to say, he is not doing word salad. He knows what these words mean that he used.
I still don't like it. In
Yeah.
the sense that I prefer you people using simple language.
Yeah, but this is because he's really trying to comprehend it in detail, and there are very few people who can follow him in that. And the problem is, if which is what he does, he is somewhat missing the mark, which is normal when you try to understand something, put something into words that you don't understand yet, that you don't fully understand yet, that you have an idea about the general direction, and the general direction is there, but there is no one to say, oh, you have to change this angle a little bit here, and you have to change the focus of your lens a little bit here.
The Horned Rabbit put it pretty very well in the chat, where he says Connor seems to be trying to apply the Christian idea of immortal soul to Buddhism, which is very much what he's doing.
Yes, that is what a lot of these people who translated the Tao Te Ching into German also did, and why I use this example of the name of God, because that one translation by that noble also interpreted as a possibility, not as a fact, but as a possibility that the Tao cannot be named because it should not be, as if it is forbidden to name it. But that is not the case. It is not forbidden to give the Tao a name. It's just that it's not the Tao then.
Yeah, you putting something on it which it isn't.
Yeah, and a lot of this, I've seen this in a lot of books so far that I've read from the West, and the whole philosophic stuff is basically that. It's attributing all these personalized things with intent, like they try to anthropomorphize everything. Which is ironic when you have a religion that says, oh, there's one God, but then you try to anthropomorphize everything that you hear from somewhere else and try to give it intent and purpose when that isn't there, when it's just a force of nature doesn't have an intent. A force of nature doesn't have a purpose. It just is. When there's a spring flood, there may be a reason why it happened. But are you going to argue with the spring flood that is going to flood your town?
I'm gonna sue it.
Yeah. Argue against it all you will. It's just going to happen because you may have a divine spark in you, but you are not God. While the Gnostics believe themselves each to be God. Which is something again that they exaggerate because, well, it's the narcissistic power fantasy on steroids. I guess that's why they love the magical thinking of socialism so much. You can be whatever you want. Why they target borderliners especially because they're stuck in that. Yeah, except that's not allowed.
To
clicked it at the same time again.
Energy to the
Samsara is the permanent world.
Yeah.
Nirvana is basically ultimate consciousness.
Right.
No.
You can perhaps compare it with gnosis.
No.
Or
no. This is the most not thing it is.
So, and as an aside, Rory is a bit mumbly in some terms. Whatever he said previously, samsara is one of the terms used, which is the world we experience is
the wheel of suffering.
Yes. And also before I was for a second unsure what he was talking about when he was talking about Siddhartha Gautama, because he pronounced it so weirdly, but that's what he was talking about. But also, yes, this here we now reached the point where it's like very much no, it's not that.
It's Nevada is not gnosis. Oh God, no. and it's not what, how did he put it? It's not some sort of consciousness.
Yes, it isn't. I think the old Tibetan word was compromised of the words for removing or resolving and all suffering. I think a construction like similar to that, but it more complicated and a bit longer. That was the general idea.
Yeah. You'd still be wrong, but at least somewhat closer if you use the Christian heaven. That's also completely wrong, but it is less wrong than this.
You heard it right here, Christians. Heaven is wrong. No,
like Dante's Inferno is well, the heaven part is closer to that. The description there is closer to nirvana than what Rory just said about gnosis and some collective consciousness.
Pet peeve of mine is always it's La Divina Commedia, and not Dante's Inferno.
Yes,
it's always a pet peeve of mine.
Yes, it is the second book. Okay.
Sorry.
Greek Gnosis or Jewish Kabbalah, where the ultimate stage is unknowable, unitary consciousness from which everything comes from. The Hindus call it Maya.
Right.
So
is it reunion with is either Brahma or Brahmin? I can never remember which one's the ultimate one.
Sorry, Maya is the illusion. Brahman is the.
Which is
Brahma is not the Brahma is not the ultimate one. It is Brahma is an aspect of the Trinity.
It like what they say. It may be correct to all these other things, but Buddhism doesn't have this concept of there being this one unity.
Mm-hmm. And the strange thing is, if the Christian religion is an update on the Judeo religion, then why does the Judeo religion have this thing in it, but the Christian doesn't?
Christians patched it out.
How do you just why do you just change your metaphysics?
I wouldn't know. Interesting question, but no clue.
It's like the new World of Warcraft update.
Yeah.
Yeah. All your classes have been revamped. They're all weird now.
Overwatch 2.0, we now made the classes different, so they're not the same as they were originally.
We changed the resurrection system. You now don't spawn at the graveyard as a ghost and have to run to your corpse. You now have to pay $10 in order to instant revive. Microtransactions!
Yay!
The ultimate consciousness is the unity.
Yep, sorry.
Which makes me want to make the joke about karma being Buddhism's microtransaction.
Well, we don't have Cookie here as a shield against accusations. So we have to wait for those jokes for another time.
Consciousness is the unitary consciousness, the all, basically the one, if you like it, or the monad. Yeah,
so this is where those are my contentions with that particular bit. It's that okay, you must have an integrated view of reality, but that's non-verifiable. So that's just one standard that doesn't quite vibe with me. And then it's difficult to conceptualize. It's not difficult to conceptualize now that you've explained it, but the consistent self that iterates across lifetimes. There is a you, but the goal is to stop being you and reabsorb yourself into nirvana, the broader permanent spirit. And
so this is gonna be his main contention throughout the rest, and I think some other. But this is a very important part where I felt really was like when I wrote you was after this part where it's like just like no, he doesn't understand it.
Well, it is the part that is difficult to understand because it is a reincarnation without reincarnation in a way.
Indeed, but I think as we've explained, it's very much an issue not of. It's an issue of not properly understanding the thing rather than being malicious.
Mm-hmm.
And it's to reiterate, yes, there is no consistent selves, and no, it's not the case that you not achieving, also not becoming. It's hard to say. As a Buddha, you're not going to be understanding that you were this continuous person or soul throughout these lives. It's understanding the causality between the lives.
Mm-hmm.
So what life caused the next and what life caused the next. So there's no consistent self through these lives. It's a consistent chain of causality from life to life.
Yeah, and even if there is no self that is transferred, you would still have some interest in that next life, not having to sit through whatever bad karma you accumulated.
Yeah, I mean, you basically can set yourself up for a better run next time.
Yeah, but his problem is to understand that, oh, but if it is not my self, my ego, then it's not me, therefore it's irrelevant, so why should I care?
Yeah, and also they still seem as a small part of his phrase. I forgot what exact wording he used, but they also still seem to be under the notion that they introduced at the very beginning of Buddhism not accepting reality,
which is a tall complaint coming from people who believe in a messiah who did some miracles that have never been reproduced ever and cannot be known to have happened. They have to be believed.
I mean,
empirical reality does not attest to the miracles having happened, is what I'm saying.
For me, it's just an example of they may have read stuff on Buddhism, but they really didn't properly research it.
Well, Connor read something from Stanford, which is not the first source I would go to.
No.
Yeah.
Did you want to say something?
I thought I wanted to say something, but it's one of those thoughts that I think need to linger a little more.
Consciousness. That's one sort of sticking point I have.
Thought here. If you think the reincarnation thing is irrelevant to bother with because your conscious mind, your ego, your personality, if you will, isn't transferred to the next life, that therefore it's irrelevant. Like, how would you? The thing is, this is a part of belief again, where see, this is why I said that the thought needs to linger more to find the right words. Because this is something you can't really prove forwards or backwards. You have the stories about Gautama Buddha, okay, but and weird esoteric people who claim a lot of stuff, but it's nothing you can measure with scientific tools, as far as we can tell.
Also,
the question is what's your issue with it? Because similar non-harmful concepts, because this is rather a positive concept that gives people incentives to behave well. Why do you take issue with that if you have similar or even worse issues in Christianity that are also not measurable?
I think
Sounds like a whataboutism, I know.
I would also like to mention that two things. For one, I can see from his perspective how, like, if you take his perspective of his level of understanding of Buddhism, I can see a logical contradiction between reincarnation and there not being self. If you just take the sentence of you don't have a self as just that, if you don't understand the philosophy behind it, I can see how you can hear that and can hear also the concept that you reincarnate and then be confused, well, because they, on the extreme surface level, don't seem to mix. I get that. So from that perspective, I can understand. It's just very, very, very surface level. The other thing I wanted to say is that in Buddhism, no Buddhist master ever told me that you have to believe in reincarnation. You simply follow the path. You exercise and everything, and whether you believe in reincarnation or not, it's going to be good for you. Because it's a good path.
Yeah, well, Christianity in its various forms puts the incentive of paradise, heaven, directly as a reward, or, again, in some versions of it, hell as the thing to scare you into virtuous behavior. You better do as I tell you, or it will be eternal suffering. Buddhism doesn't need that. Buddhism just says, well,
you're going to find out yourself.
Yeah. If you want to be an asshole, but well, it's not going to be good for you in the long run.
Similar stance on there was this funny story in a book by a Buddhist master where it talks about a person he greatly respected. And that lady, throughout the entire time, she, I think, smoked and ate meat and seemed like not a very caring person. But later in life, so towards the end of life, it clearly showed that she understood it very well. She understood Buddhism very well. She simply chose to eat meat. And she chose to smoke, even if understanding that it technically is stuff that it's not, you learn is not the best. In the sense of understanding the world, etc., especially smoking. The eating meat is kind of neutral, and depending on what country the Buddhism is from, is more of a topic or less of a topic. But the smoking, generally speaking, or alcohol or everything, is because it alters your state of mind. So it's bad for meditation, of course, because you should have a clear head. But even then, you can smoke.
You can interpret that as I'm fine with improving some of these parts now. The rest is next life.
In a way, yes.
It's not. It's not. As you say, it's not the best of paths, but it is at least adhering to the relevant part of it.
I'd recommend against it, but again, a Buddhist master would say you shouldn't smoke. But he's not going to tell you you're going to end up in hell, because, he doesn't need to tell you you're going to end up in hell. Because you yourself going to find the consequences of your action.
Yeah. Savaki Kodo got drunk once in a while with his students.
And now, of course, that doesn't mean that criminals shouldn't be punished. That's an entire different thing.
It's just...
Because the fundamental notion is stuff you do to yourself is much different thing than stuff you do to others.
Yeah, this is the parental variant of that, where relatively standard story, if not occurrence. It's when a Buddhist master goes out with his juvenile student and says, okay, I know you're tempted by the drinking all the time. We're gonna get out and we're gonna go drink. And then they really drink until the student barfs. And then it's done. Okay, we've done the experience now. Back to the temple.
It also lines up with the life of Siddhartha Gautama, who lived in excess and then in absolute asceticism.
Yes, he got both extremes.
And then realized the middle way is a bit better.
Yeah, and through the realization of the experience of both extremes, you can then not triangulate because it's two here. You can align. You can find the correct measurement where the balance is, where it's okay, where life is good. It's simply, you could also say it's don't fall to extremes simply. And the same I have been talking about in regards to Christianity with the virtues and the sins. Because if you do only the virtues and zero of the sins, you are a crippled person.
Yeah.
Only chastity and no lust? Well, that's no children.
Also part of the idea in Buddhism is if you attach yourself to an extreme, it's gonna lead to suffering because you attach yourself to the extreme and desires, because the attachment in itself is not great.
Yeah. Well, it's an obsession in itself. So technically, speaking of Warhammer 40k, if you indulge in only the virtues and reject all the sins, you are also not worshipping, but you are also feeding Slanesh, because you are doing something in excess, not in balance.
Yeah. And the one a story about a thing that Zen Buddhists do to people who want to become students in Japan is where the one specific school where they just let them sit out. I forgot the specific question, but give them a question and let them think for themselves, and then just leave them sitting there for like a week. And if they understood the question, understood the answer, and that it's a bit more difficult than first thought, they are accepted as students. And I think the ultimate goal is to teach that trying to get rid of attachment is in itself an attachment to trying to get rid of attachment.
Yeah, because it's again, you're obsessed with a goal instead of just following the path.
Exactly.
You're cramped up, like the music, the guitar example. There's some muscle somewhere that you're not yet consciously aware of that is cramped up, and so your play doesn't sound really as fluid as it could be. What you mentioned is you find that as well in koan. It is paradoxes, or which is not always, it's not always paradoxes, but you could say logic riddles, philosophical logic riddles, allegories that seem not to make sense at first, and that Rinzai Zen especially uses those for meditation, and they are also good signs of how a master can check how far a student has progressed, because these things, they don't really make sense until you get your small enlightenment, and then it's obvious. The meanings become obvious, how these things make sense. And so it goes on. That's the funny part about it. That's why Buddhists, on the higher they are, the more ridiculous humor they develop. Okay, Crazy seems to be... he's currently AFK and has to listen, and I just ran out of a tangent. Damn it. I can look at the chat for a moment. I think there was a question. Tudor asked, what do you have to say about the show Has-Been Hotel? I have an idea, but I want to hear you say it. I'd only seen the trailer back in the day, and the show, after all I've heard, I don't even want to bother. It just sounds pathetic and horribly written and nonsensical, mainly based on fan fiction about Christianity and Apocrypha. Like even the fan fiction built on the Apocrypha doesn't make sense. The Apocrypha have been used in Vampire the Masquerade to explain lore in that, and that was done very well. But this thing is just nonsense. And I think that's where I'll keep it for now.
Phew. Yeah, I know basically nothing about it, but it never seemed appealing to me.
Yeah. Let's go.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is something that I obviously don't agree with. I don't believe in reincarnation, so it's something that I would not necessarily say is a strong suit of Buddhism, because it's a very unique thing to the East as well, isn't it? There aren't, you get every now and then sort of an isolated tribe outside of the Eastern world that might believe in some form of reincarnation, but in sort of the Northern Hemisphere, it's a rare belief to have outside of that. And I think that the...
carry on. I've got something to say there.
No, you go ahead, actually.
I personally do believe in reincarnation, and as did northern pagans. So it's worth not thinking it as a self, but more. The self is a product of the ego, basically.
The Norse religion, the Norse Germanic religion, which he refers to as paganism, there's not really reincarnation that happens there.
Yeah, but also the thing about reincarnation, it's also kind of I mean, it's more common in the East. That's true, but to say it in a strange way, it's no that thought has to sit for a while.
Yeah, because the Norse Germanic religion and similar ones, the Finnish one, which has its own cycle of songs. We say Liederzyklus in German, and the Slavic cousin of that. That's animistic, which means you have ancestral spirits, similar to the Romans had ancestral spirits. That's what they kept the fire going for in the house, as for respect and for connection to the ancestral spirits of the family. That doesn't jive well with reincarnation. That if you want to bring that into it, you are entering this neo-paganism stuff, which is just take whatever you like, throw it together, and claim it's paganism. That's not really how it works. It's like this Wicca stuff. It's just fan fiction.
Also, to take a comment from the chat by the Birthing Show, where he says, my belief is that reincarnation is to make people feel better that they messed up, because you get unlimited choice to be a better person. Well, I can see that is a perspective that some people have. In Buddhism, being reincarnated is not a good thing, because it means your suffering is extended.
Yeah, that's why it is the samsara is the wheel of suffering. Why would you want more of that?
It's deliberately. It really is the idea that you really don't want to reincarnate many more times. You want to get on the path to get away from reincarnation, unless you decide, once you gain enlightenment, you decide to choose to come back and teach people.
Yeah, I made a joke once that in order to be a bodhisattva, you have to be a bit of a masochist.
A bit of a what?
You have to be a bit of a masochist.
Yeah. Oh, samsara me harder, daddy.
Nirvana's boring. Look, there's so much nonsense going on here. I couldn't even make that up. Like, what the hell? And hello, Bathing Show.
mundane thing.
What that?
So the self is me, right? I, yeah.
Mhm.
Whereas whatever's animating that self is apart from the self, in a sense. But there's a connection between it, which we'd call energy or chi, as the Chinese do, or some kind of like
No.
vital force, right? I don't know for Buddhism specifically, because I'm only well versed, well, not particularly well versed, but I only really know the Vajrayana school, which is the Tibetan Tantra, the more esoteric stuff.
And so these things he just said are 10 different things that are not related in the way that he's saying they are related to each other.
Oh my, I got lost. My brain overloaded.
Yes,
I
that's
couldn't
the
follow
problem,
anymore.
because Tantra is very much different to Vajrayana. Chi is very much different to all of that. So it's very much
Here's random buzzwords that sound cool because magic.
Vajrayana is very different thing to what he's talking about.
Mhm.
And I know a thing what he means, because there is a thing as energy, and it is actually very much a thing that is talked about and used in the school that I practice, which is prana, which is energy, which is life
Mhm.
force, which is, yeah, the best way to describe it is energy, and in Chinese it's often called qi. But in the sense, it's not this what Western esotericists call this energy, this thing that then lets you do things with it. It's more like
And then you become Shai Hulud.
it's part of your body. It's an energy in your body that you can train, manipulate to do things with your body. Similar to how when you train to lift weights, you're gonna be better at lifting weights. Similar how the breathing techniques, and if you focus on fire breathing techniques, these are breathing techniques with focuses on certain parts of your body, which help circulating blood, which helps warm your body. Ergo, fire breathing technique.
Yeah. Oh my god, more energy in that body part.
Exactly, and the fire breathing technique I know is taking that deep breath, focusing on the stomach around your belly where the fire chakra is located, focusing on it for a bit, holding your breath while you do that, and then breathing slowly out through your nose.
Yeah. No magic involved. It's just
And it
that
really
through.
does warm you up.
Yeah, because it's why ever following these mental exercises has these effects. Following these mental exercises has these effects.
And
That is an empirical thing.
the important part about it being called prana, lung, chi, energy is a visualization. To focus on a specific body part, on a specific chakra, and an energy from that chakra, like the air chakra, which is placed in your heart, or where your heart is, where also your lungs are, makes sense that it's there, and the breathing techniques help air circulate through your body, to put it simply. So it makes sense to visualize it in a way that human can easily visualize.
Mhm.
And also, it's a very old tradition, so maybe they didn't have the specific medical knowledge to explain it in biological terms.
Yeah, that is usually what is the case. Including to, hey, let's do the like any jungle tribe with a shaman. Let's do the healing ritual. The healing ritual contains these 13 steps, and for the 5 diseases that come around in that jungle tribe, if you follow all these 13 steps, it will heal all of these diseases, but not every step is relevant for each disease. But like a combination of 2 and 5 and 7 for that disease, and the other one is 6 and 4, and generally they all entail pay some attention to the patient, do some what is it called, bedside manners. Bedside manners do help a lot in getting healthy. And that's if that is done through, hey, let's dance around the patient and then call the ancestral spirits and then make funny noises, and the patient will feel cared for, which activates the placebo effect because he believes he's being healed now by the magic stuff. And that's just the placebo effect. You want the placebo effect to get people healthy. That's
Yeah.
especially
Also-
in psychopharmaca, that is 70% of the effect is placebo.
Also, to bring back to the video, the reason why it's so sometimes difficult to talk about Buddhism in the West is because he now took like 4 different concepts of 4 different stages of Buddhism, or 4 different, like, not even stages is the wrong word, 4 different aspects of Buddhist tradition, and put them on the same level as interrelated to each other, when they're in fact not quite.
It's like throwing all the denominations of Christianity into one pot and stirring with the big wooden spoon, and then wondering why it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's like conflating the worship of Mary with the worship of the Trinity, with the worship of Jesus and the worship of God. It's like one of these things is not like the others.
Mhm.
And they're all different things. They're all different level of different things, of different tradition in Christianity, but putting all of them on the same level in one sense is basically what he did to Buddhism.
Amazing. That it is important to distinguish between things. If there's one thing we've learned from the socialists, is to not erode all borders between things. Which is what our 3 friends here are accidentally doing. Get an expert. you have a preacher, minister, whatever for your Christian stuff. Get a Buddhist monk.
I would love it if they had a Buddhist monk on to interview.
Yeah. He'd also not be in a fight with the Christian. Most likely.
However, it's very difficult for the Western mind to sort of separate the idea of self from soul, I think.
Yeah. Well,
Yes.
Because the aspect of the individuated soul is
Yeah,
where
yeah.
the self comes from. This is
Yeah.
my break from the Buddhist tradition. That's why I just sort of combine.
It's
Mind
well,
and soul are not the same.
the one thing that I despise about this sentence here by Connor is that the way he phrases it fundamentally shows that he cannot accept that this might not be what other people think, or it might not be the right thing.
Yeah, he cannot.
he
He
says,
thinks he projects his hard Christian mindset onto the rest of Europe.
Well, the
Or
world.
the
Buddhism.
Western world. At least the Western world.
And the thing he specifically said is that the individuated self comes from the soul. That's why I have issue with Buddhism there and there. It's
Yeah.
like, hold on, stop.
Yeah. And look how many
There's-
words in German we have for these. We have Seele, soul, Geist, which is spirit or ghost. Ghost and spirit are the same word in German. And mind, which is Verstand, which can also be Geist. So Geist has already several meanings, but it's not the same as Seele. And although in mental illnesses, we refer to either illnesses of the soul or Geisteskrankheit, like ghost diseases.
Verstand can also mean sense
Yes.
in the English, just because to add to the
Yeah.
complication
Yeah,
of
yeah,
the word.
it's and depending on where you are in the world, these words all hold slightly different meanings, as they aim at slightly different things or encapsulate several concepts at once. So I
Yeah.
don't have a to distinguish
I mean-
between soul and spirit and mind is already possible in the English language.
To me, it's just frustrating to see a person who he doesn't. I don't think he's stupid. I really don't think he's stupid. Connor is. I just think he's very set in his way and has a very inflexible mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it's a bit frustrating to see the disservice being done to Buddhism by not approaching it on its turf. But
Yeah,
having this perspective that it is fact that as it comes across, he's saying it. It is fact that your individuated self comes from your soul. So how can you have a belief where there is no soul, but you have an individuated self? It's what I get from that, what he's saying, which I think is completely wrong.
Yeah,
Because-
it's the if he was translating the Tao Te Ching, it would be a completely nonsensical text.
Yeah.
Quite
However, not to say I get where he's coming from.
Yeah.
In the sense, I get from his perspective, it seems this way.
Yeah, but
I'm just saying that that's wrong.
It's because of this initial error that the follow-up mistakes of his failure to comprehend comes from.
Yes.
There's also something that I wanted to pick up on before I move on to the next point.
Oh, to finish, I don't mean to tell Connor that he shouldn't believe what he believes.
Oh no,
I
but
think-
it begins
for
with
me-
how you phrase it.
Exactly. For me, it's perfectly fine for him to believe that your individual itself comes from the soul.
Mhm.
It's just that he seems to be critiquing Buddhism on an internal problem when this internal problem doesn't exist. Because his perspective thinks of the terms in this way, so the internal problem is applied from the outside.
Yeah, Buddhism would work differently or not at all if it worked the way that he projects onto it.
Yeah, that projects onto it. That's a good way to phrase it, because it's not taking Buddhism on its term, but on Connor's term, which is what I'm critiquing, not what Connor believes.
By the way, with the how the reincarnation does work, as Crazy A touched upon, through that it is actually questionable, very questionable, on why there would be people who can claim that they can tell you about their past lives, because there is no there's nothing left of that attachment.
Yes.
They're all frauds.
In one way, yes. In another way, you understand the causation. So that there are certain
Yes.
speeches of Buddha where he speaks about his past lives, where it's the mention with the intention of causation.
Yeah, well, even
But
that would be from a much higher level that you wouldn't naturally achieve.
Exactly, and it's also done in the sense to teach people something. So it could also be that he's entirely making a lot of it up to teach a concept.
Yeah, that which then got misinterpreted. Because one of the things is that after the death of the Buddha, after he left this world to wherever,
The great party beyond.
the great party beyond, suddenly there were many thousands of claims of things he said. A lot of like so many quotes that if he had said them all, he would never have gotten time to meditate. Because that's what happens when your most important guy of your thing is not there anymore. He can't deny he said it. Then you can, depending on how close you are to the guy, you can put a lot of things on that. The hadith are a similar issue in Islam, where the guy that knew the guy that met the guy that was the roommate of the guy had heard from the other room the thing that Muhammad said.
I swear,
Right.
my friend told me that Buddha said pineapple on pizza is fine.
Heresy. Yeah, so everything is to be taken with a grain of salt. And that is one of the essences of Buddhism as well. It's not blind faith. If you have your doubts, have your
because
doubts.
The entire concept behind Buddhism is that what you experience you can't take for granted because it's ever changing and you build a view of it on it.
Yeah.
So of course you can't take anything on blind faith.
Yeah, and your senses only give you a limited view of objective reality. And if those are distorted by something else, like alcohol, you can trust them even less. That's the thing. It's not that as we said before, it doesn't objective reality doesn't exist. It's just that your subjective senses are only giving you a glimpse of it.
It's the best example of it is when when we both talk about the color red. It might look entirely different from to me and to you.
It most likely does because I can see UVA.
Yeah, okay, yeah, but so it even most likely does look very different, but there's still this thing still has an objective color.
Mm-hmm.
It looks that way,
Yeah,
even though we may not perceive it to look that way.
It is that exact wavelength that we have been able to measure and define.
Yes.
That wavelength of light is red. That wavelength of light is magenta. That is purple. That over there is this disgusting yellow that looks like piss. Anything else I wanted to mention on that? I forgot. It's fine.
To deification, and I think in which you're talking about, so the Theravada, which sticks more closely to the original teachings of Siddhartha Gautama, is more likely to revere Buddha and not many others, although quite often, because they're pretty laissez-faire, you might have a Theravada temple, you might have other deities because other sects of Buddhism pray there, but or meditate there, whatever they're doing there, right? Whereas some of the other ones may have a sort of pantheon, as you said. There's a sort of...
How many saints does Christianity have that they put up statues for and dedicate monasteries to? And is that actually polytheism in disguise?
It's actually a great comparison. It's like reverence does not equal worship.
Mm-hmm. Well, there are Christians who pray to certain saints.
I mean, yeah, you could take an outlier and say, well, there are certain Christians who pray to Mary, but usually Christianity wouldn't say, yeah, Mary is therefore God, it's therefore same to God in that Christian sect, or, well, denomination of Christian.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it's this exemplifies great this thing that we keep talking about in terms of perspective. You see a golden statue of Buddha, you see them meditating before it, which is what they're actually doing, and without knowing that, you go, oh, look, they're worshipping Buddha.
Yeah, and if you have a mention or even a statue of a bodhisattva somewhere, that is usually just to remind that, hey, he said this one really good thing, let's not forget it. Instead of so it's not a polytheism, because if you call that a polytheism, yeah, and then we do have to talk about the saints.
Yeah, well, we could start fundamentally with the Trinity. Is this one or is this three?
Well, I still believe that the Hindu Trinity makes more sense.
There's actually also the Trinity in Buddhism, but it's entirely different. It's body, speech, and mind.
That is actually that is Jungian psychology Trinity that uses the same as
proper mind, proper body, and proper speech.
Yeah. And yeah, well, the another time, because I'm also getting tired.
Yeah.
Polytheism to it, although even calling it theism seems a bit strong, doesn't it?
That's why I said parallel. It's to do with cosmology. So Theravada thinks that there's only one world, and one Buddha, whereas Mahayana, for example, thinks there's multiple worlds, multiple Buddhas, and they're a lot more likely to worship bodhisattvas as deities, not in the sense of gods, but more.
If you worship a bodhisattva, you're doing something very, very, very wrong. Just as well, what we mentioned before, emulation, not worship. Like the the Pentecostals, they worship Jesus. Like they get high on Jesus. It's almost, I've seen them pray and preach. It looks almost like masturbation. It looks sexual, and I've talked with some of them, and they completely reject the idea of emulating Jesus, like in order to be as good as that. Find the Jesus in you, which is Buddha. The Buddhism is find the Buddha in you, and they completely reject that because they say, "Oh, but Jesus is perfect. I could never be perfect, so why even try? Because you can't reach the goal, why even try? So rather be this pathetic little creature that just worships blindly." They also have some other really weird ideas that actually are very detrimental. Oh, you just need to believe in Jesus and you get into heaven. It doesn't matter what else you do. So if you are a pathological liar, and I've known two of them in that belief system, that's okay. So it's okay to set people up and leave them in their demise, leave them in their suffering, and leave them hanging when you could actually help very easily by speaking the truth. They won't do that, and it's okay because they will go to heaven anyway, because their God is not one of wrath. Everybody gets to heaven as long as you believe in Jesus. That is so narcissistic. I have trouble putting it into words.
Yeah.
It is the most off the path you probably could be without sacrificing children. And this is the thing. It's like, the Buddha is perfect, or Jesus is perfect. That's why I could never achieve that. Therefore, it's pointless to try. So why should I waste my time with that? Like you give up preemptively.
Yeah.
Because you think you can't reach the goal. But again, it's not about the goal. The path is the goal. Through the path, you step by step get closer to it. That's the point.
I mean, if you follow the path, the goal is an inevitability.
Yes, that is a good way to put it. And I do not understand why this most basic concept does not even come up once. Because that technically works the exact same way in Christianity. If you follow the path where you do not sin, you get to heaven. Win.
More like, you could kind of say like a Jungian archetype.
They're kind of like patron saints, aren't they?
Yeah,
in a way, in that you have a specific saint that represents a certain virtue towards a path towards a higher ideal and toward becoming closer to a sort of higher power.
There's a little bit of that in Nara in Japan, because they've got this great palace with this colossal Buddha statue in the middle of it, but around the gates and in the four corners of the palace there are these different demigods.
Very important in the Japanese context is that Shinto temples and Buddha temples are very close to each other, often were used by, well, sometimes by the same people. Buddhists use Shinto temple, Shinto use Buddhist temple, and Shinto sometimes also use the imagery of the Buddha. So they are not very separated. They actually over time got very close to each other, different but very close to each other. So
because from the view of Shinto, the Buddha would be a deity.
Yes, that's the thing.
Perspective.
So from a certain perspective, it can be that there's a Buddhist temple with statues of Shinto gods and vice versa. A Shinto temple with Buddha statues in it, because, well, these two religions were insanely close to each other in Japan, so that sometimes it's actually hard to separate them in certain cases and certain schools. And even some modern Japanese people have you sometimes see it in game, basically monks that are Shinto monks are also having like Buddhist paraphernalia on them, because it's extremely hard sometimes to separate the two in Japan,
Mm-hmm.
because they've always been so close to each other. So using this example is yet again a not understanding of context.
Mm-hmm.
All with weapons and different faces. They almost look like Dark Souls bosses. That's the first thing I thought. If I've got photos,
What do
I'll
you
send
think
them
they're
to-
modeled after?
to whoever's
Yeah.
editing. And they're subordinates to the Buddha, and I think they represent the winds. So they're almost like pagan totems, but they're still correlative to Buddha.
Well,
So there's a-
there are archetypes, there are aspects of divinity, right?
Mm.
All of
Is calling them aspects of divinity is wrong, because the concept of divinity is
Not, I
Not
wouldn't
really
associate that with Buddhism.
yeah, it isn't a thing in Buddhism. But the thing is, with these statues, once again, are examples of emotions. For example, the which is known to some people in the West, the Shura or the Ashura, which are well, often said spirits, demons, gods, sometimes who are vengeful, wrathful, etc. But often in Buddhism, those are just, well, embodiments of anger and wrath.
Mhm.
So you look upon them while meditating them, you embody the anger and wrath, and then you meditate and learn how to subside, let it go, and be at peace. So that you learn that when you get in a heated argument, that you don't get attached to anger.
Yeah. And side note on that, the Ashura in Hinduism. If you read up on the mythology about that, and read in parallel the history of the Assyrian Empire, which was pronounced Ashur, you will find hilarious similarities and parallels. Because sometimes history inspires mythology. It just needs to come from far enough away or be far enough in the past.
Yes.
which is represented by Buddha, not Buddha the individual, but Buddha, as I said, the ultimate archetype. For example, in Thailand, Theravada, which is more about, again, a generalization. All of this is like a massive pie chart.
There's a lot of variation, yeah.
You will have, like, in the temples, specific priests who are there, their whole life purpose is to be a bodhisattva, and basically they'll be supported by members of the community. There will be like pillars of the community, as would a pastor in a church or whatever. Whereas in Mahayana nations, it's a lot more inclusive, like everyone sort of.
Which is also a thing that to me it's a misunderstanding of Mahayana.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's not like a nation that it's not like
It's not a national religion version.
the big wagon and the small wagon are. I always forget the proper words.
Hinayana and Mahayana.
Thank you. I always remember them as big wagon and small wagon.
Yes, that's what they mean, basically.
Yeah, and the thing about them is it's not like Orthodox and Catholic.
Uh-huh.
It's not at all that. It's more akin to priest versus practicing Christian. One of them
In a way.
to oversimplify it, to give a Christian, a somewhat Christian example is one of them has very specific education rules, etc., that they follow, and the other one is more self-teaching in a way. They can have a teacher, etc., but they're less rules.
Yeah, but
it's
the association you have between the two is the one who abides by the many rules in a very strict manner, the Hinayana, the small wagon,
Yes.
is the one who you can see in parallel with someone who has trouble making decisions for himself. He wants to be a virtuous person, but he doesn't really know how to, so he's a manual.
Yeah.
And the Mahayana, the large vehicle, is more for the person who is already on a higher developed level of consciousness, the self-actualizing mind, who can make decisions for himself, that and
Yeah.
foresee the consequences, and therefore doesn't need this rigorous set of minutiae and rules. Things like with which foot to enter the temple first, or the dojo, that becomes a part of ritual and politeness. In the Hinayana, it is something that you have to do, or you just break everything.
Yeah, that's a way to phrase it. But it's not a thing like a Christian denomination.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It's two different ways to go about getting closer to enlightenment and being virtuous.
As always, Buddhists wouldn't say one is better than the other.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on you which one works better for you.
Yeah, and which helps you more. Because the practitioner of the Mahayana will occasionally have a drink, and it will not tarnish him, because he will not get addicted. Someone because he has the self-control. Right, that was the term that I was lacking before. The self-discipline in the Hinayana is really strictly enforced, and afraid to break, afraid to misstep. In the like somebody who is prone to addiction would better be following the Hinayana, because that keeps a strict grip on him. Someone who does not need to worry about getting addicted because he has the self-control, Mahayana is fine.
Yep.
So I would go about it.
It's more of it's a less exclusionary process.
So it's the difference between almost like Catholic and Protestant.
Guess so, yeah.
Oh my god, he actually said it.
I
How could you even
was
come to this idea?
represent it slightly different.
Yeah.
What?
As we said, I think he just read a Stanford summary.
I don't think this. I could not imagine that the Stanford summary would contain
no,
this
no.
nonsense.
A Stanford summary about Buddhism. Not the
Yeah, but that's what Rory said. Connor said he read the Stanford summary.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
The Stanford
That's
summary
why-
probably does not contain an explanation about the Hinayana and the Mahayana.
Yeah, that's what I mean with Connor's question. So about that then Rory says yes to it is well.
He's
No.
just winging it. You could have gotten, I don't know, like some random single mother onto the show who just talks out of her ass. That would have had the same effect.
Honest to God, I think the pastor Calvin Robinson would have had some more intelligent things to say about Buddhism
Yes.
than Connor.
Yes, especially if he had any knowledge of Jesuits, because they have the Jesuits have through Inomia LaSalle brought Zen into the church. However, some of the language that Inomia LaSalle used in his books remind me more of Gnosticism, and that through that they take the parallels from Zen.
Yeah.
Because these things are they are related in a horrible way, where Gnosticism seems like the decrepit inbred cousin born from incest. But yeah, we have a few more seconds.
differently than that, but
Right.
I'll get onto that a bit later.
To watch the full video, please become a premium
No.
member at lotuseaters.com.
No, this
sorry.
video does not. I thought about getting that actually because they have some interesting things, but after this video,
It makes me not want to get it.
yeah, because you just showed that you are a bunch of buffoons who are talking out of their asses about something they have absolutely no clue about.
And
This is where you are just entertainment, where you were just eating the lotuses without any substance. There was no substance here.
the one thing Bear Thing Show mentions here is, could it be argued as entry-level answer, question mark, that like there isn't time to go into detail here, gross simplification for now. Well, yes, it is gross simplification. The thing behind it is it's also a wrong gross simplification.
Yeah,
And
and
the
because
thing is,
Rory states things as fact.
if you make a long form content or exploring series or contemplations, etc., whatever they call it, I at least expect them to have somebody who knows it, even if it's somebody who read into it properly. Have somebody like Connor, which his questions and critiques are good to then continue the conversation. The problem is here you have nobody who actually knows his stuff. All of them have read a bit into it,
Mm-hmm.
some less, some more, but none of them have the fundamental understanding
Yeah.
of the philosophy behind it, in the sense on how the thinking differs from Western thinking,
Yeah.
from Christian thinking, and what the terms actually mean. And yes, it in some ways Buddhism is a bit of a bad thing to tackle in this context because it requires a lot of research to properly understand.
And when you only have outsiders, it's not a problem to ask these questions. Asking all the questions is completely fine, good, necessary. The problem is when you sit there and you state things as answers that are wrong. That's
like
the issue. You don't have anyone who can actually give answers on this panel.
Example from the video is confidently saying that nirvana is gnosis when there are two entirely different concepts. And they say it confidently, so now people will watch this video and go away from it saying, oh yeah, it's like gnosis.
Yeah, this is actual misinformation, non-malicious misinformation out of ignorance and hubris.
And to reiterate, I like quite a bit of the Lotus Eaters, but here this video frustrated me so much more because I understand them to not be idiots. So I was very disappointed by this video in the sense that they really didn't know their stuff.
I'm sure they have some Buddhist centers in England.
Oh, absolutely, they ought to have.
I mean, there's several in Germany, there's several in France.
We have in Switzerland, near Lake Geneva, a completely, I think one of the only in Europe acknowledged proper Tibetan Buddhist monastery.
Huh, interesting.
You can visit it. Can even stay there for a night or three.
There's one in Bavaria by the Chechnyan border where you can actually go for a week or two for just meditation with like silent meditation. You don't say anything for the entire time.
Yeah.
That's pretty neat.
And yes, there are non-silent meditations where you recite, wrong translation again, we recite prayers, which aren't really prayers, where like the one thing most Westerners know, the Om Mani Padme Hum, which is in meditation you use the sounds to get in a meditative state. And so it's similar to repeated breathing techniques. It's a repeated speaking technique to get into the state of, to use an English word, the state of flow.
Yeah. Well, do you mean mantra?
Yeah, mantras.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my issue with this is especially this video is supposed to sell me the longer version of this.
It doesn't.
With how? With what? You're just babbling out of your ass. It would make more sense to listen to Free Hippies and Joe Rogan on dope. and that would only be nonsense, but it would probably be more consistent.
Yeah, I mean, at least Joe Rogan would probably talk to a Buddhist monk.
Yeah, he would make the effort
Or-
to get one.
Or somebody who knows quite a bit about the
He
topic.
would also ask him if he ever did DMT, but that's beside the point.
Yeah, I think the Buddhist monk would probably laugh and say no.
Not yet. I think some might say, "Oh, not yet."
Yeah,
Might never do
some
it,
might.
but that's I think that's the most honest answer. Something in the chat, anywhere, before we close this down. Is that like casting miracles in Dark Souls? No, but there are negative mantra as well, and you shouldn't play around with those. But you also won't find those in Western sources.
Fun fact, to get actually a great perspective into Japanese mythology and certain things and how they worked and how they were thought of at the time is actually Sekiro, the From Software game, because it excellently plays into the different parts of it.
Accidentally or excellently?
Excellently, and maybe in parts also accidentally play perfectly into this intermingling of Shinto and Buddhism. Because
Nice.
in the game itself, there's stuff that is just like Buddhist, but also Shinto, and it's hard to distinguish the two in the game, which is kind of how similar to reality in Japan, where they mix so heavily that sometimes it really gets hard to know where is this yet. Is this now a Shinto temple or Buddhist temple?
Yeah, and had I known that it would be Rory who makes all these bad assertions, bad statements, I would have put him on the lotus eating, and not Connor, or maybe both.
Yeah, I actually kind of forgot about Rory because I mostly ignored his part because I was like, well, it's wrong, but
Yeah,
what even are you saying?
his stuff, most of his bad stuff came in the latter half after you've stopped watching for the first time.
To answer a question to the bear thing show, no, I have not eaten elk, but I have eaten whale.
Where do you get whales in Switzerland?
Oh no, it was when I was in Iceland.
Mm-hmm. Did you also have that fermenting shark fin
No, I didn't know about it when I was there. I
that
would have tried it.
that they leave
like-
in the bucket for a month?
Yeah. And also to the other thing by the bear thing show that they should do this again. Same to host, but bring three experts. I would just like them to interview a Buddhist monk.
Yes. Yes,
I would just
simply
like,
that. Simply that. Redo the thing, but with a Buddhist monk.
Just have one of them on there.
That
Can
would be the
we-
honest thing and the intellectually honest thing to do.
Oh, one thing I would absolutely love is have a host, have Calvin Robinson, and have a Buddhist monk, and then have them chat.
Yeah, that would be beautiful. And Connor can ask his questions and probably even get answers.
Yeah. And yes, I will address this one as well with the bear thing show, where I think it is very intentional. Japan has a much deeper respect for religion than most Western countries. It is true that Japanese have a very, very special relationship with religion.
Well, they have kept the animistic part of their culture.
Yeah, and they don't have this notion of fun enough, just one religion.
Mhm.
As I think one of the last big surveys resulted in twice as many religious people than population of the country.
Generally, animistic cultures seem to be more open to other religions, more respectful to them, because they,
Yeah.
you simply see the gods of other religions as, well, just some more gods, some more spirits.
Hey, look, it's their thing, which is similar to our thing.
Yeah, we have
Nice.
ours, they have theirs, all fine.
Which is also very much a thing in Buddhism, as where they're like, hey, if you're Christian, stay Christian. You don't have to convert to Buddhism. Maybe try meditation; it would do you good, but you don't have to become a Buddhist. You can comfortably stay Christian.
It doesn't always work the other way around like that, sadly.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
No, I think that was it.
Okay, chat seems fine so far too. Then we'll close here for today. And I hope you had fun, got something out of it. And please, Lotus Eaters, you want to be more than just entertainers. Hold yourself to the standards that you advertised.
Yeah.
Have a good weekend, everyone.
Have a good one.